All right, you guys, it is time to talk about One Piece chapter 1150, because Imu has finally shown us what kind of powers they are sporting. So before we get to that though, we do have to talk about the cover page story. We got volume 34 of Yamato's exciting journey around Wano, and we see that Yamato has finally made it to Yasuo's shrine, and she buried his sword right there with him. The pilgrimage is finally completed, and now, what is next on Yamato's agenda, you might be asking? Well, don't forget, but 2 weeks ago, Otama asked us to deliver Kawamatsu's hat to him. Yes, that is right, guys. Volume 35 is gonna be Yamato meeting Kawamatsu. Am I excited for that? Hell yeah, I am. Oh man, I can't wait till something happens, you know. Ulti and page 1 were highlights. Who's Who was a highlight. But besides that, brother, I mean, you know, Yamato is one of my favorite characters in the series. But man, is it grueling to travel around Wano, let me tell you. You know, jokes aside, though, I really do hope we see something happen. Like, maybe we get to Kawamatsu, and he's been kidnapped, or maybe he's fighting a pirate group. Maybe he's defending Wano from invaders. I just hope something crazy happens, man. 35 volumes. Please, Oda, please. Especially with how crazy and hyped the chapters are, seeing these cover pages, they don't ruin my day, but, you know, like, I look at Yamato's journey, and I do frown a little bit. I'm like, oh, man. Oh, boy. One cool thing, though, about this cover page in particular is the fact that we do get confirmation that page 1 is also wearing the sun symbol on his cape as well. Just like Ulti, right? A couple chapters back, we saw Ulti sporting the sun. But here, page 1 also has the sun on his shoulder. So, will they be Straw Hat Grand Fleet members if Yamato joins? Possibly. I mean, I think that's kind of what's in line for them, right? It looks like they truly have changed their ways. Because whenever I thought of Ulti in page 1 before Yamato's journey, I just thought of a bunch of rambunctious kids, you know, kids on the loose looking for trouble. But here, they look really respectful, and I can't wait until they run into Usopp and Nami again. Like, imagine that reunion. It would be like Bellamy and Dressrosa meeting Luffy again, right? They'd meet up, and then they're like, hey, Straw Hat crew, we're done picking on you guys. Like, that's kind of what I'm imagining. Or maybe they're thankful that all of this happened even. Like, hey, thanks, Straw Hats, for defeating Kaido. We actually like being Yamato subordinates. So now, onto the chapter, but we see some village giants have finally arrived on the scene. They run up to the kids, and of course, they get pricked by St. Somers' thorn ability because it's still active. You know, despite him being chopped up into little bitty pieces, his thorns are still putting in that work. Imu notices the commotion going on around them, and they simply state that this is mayhem, and they unleash a massive blast of Conqueror's Haki. And I love what Oda does here, by the way, because he actually zooms out in that panel away from the branch, just so that we can understand the scope of how large this wave actually is. I mean, hell, giants on the branch are passing out, the kids are passing out, and even giants at the western village next to Yaru are passing out. Dory and Brogy, who are still in the forest at this point, can even feel this Haki. They both seem pretty shocked and almost concerned by this blast. Whereas Yaru, on the other hand, he looks angry. And I thought that was really interesting because of a popular theory that is going around. A popular thought that is going around. And that is that this wouldn't be Yaru's first time going against Imu. The consensus right now is that maybe this is what happened in the throne room 6 years ago with King Harold. Maybe King Harold and his 100 guards of ancient giant warriors were possessed by Imu. Maybe Imu took over them or turned them into monsters, and that is why Loki had to put them down. And that is why Yaru, the only survivor of that event besides Loki, is acting very negatively towards this Haki, which, granted, it is like evil Haki at the end of the day, so it makes sense why he looks angered, but I did think that was a really odd panel, right? Just one panel of Yaru mean mugging the camera. Yeah, I think there's a deeper meaning here, and like I said, I do not think this is Imu's first time in Elbaf. So we go on and we see that not all the giants on the branch actually pass out due to IMU'S Conqueror's Haki, so IMU decides to clean them up by summoning a magic circle, which then summons 2 cannons that shoot cannonballs at the remaining giants, and they blow up. We see the carnage, we see the explosions, and with it we see the IMU transformation reveal. And would you look at that, brother? Would you look at that? But they are an actual devil. Obviously, if you've seen a lot of devil depictions, this is pretty on the money, right? We got the black wings, we got the tail with the little point arrow thing. I don't know what to call it, point. I guess it's just a point, right? A barbed tail even. And then we even have the pitchfork as well to go alongside them. And yeah, this is pretty much what I think a lot of people kind of came to the consensus of as well, right? Back when we first got the Reverie and we saw that arrow attack Cobra and Sabo, I do think there was a good amount of people who walked away from that chapter thinking that IMU was just straight up a depiction of the devil. If you look at it and you're like, wait, what kind of tale would that be, Sai? Well, it reminds me of a cartoon devil. So we all know that Oda loves old school cartoons. I mean, Oda went on an interview and said that Tom and Jerry was what inspired Gear 5th. And if we're going in line with old school cartoons, there's nothing more classic than the cartoon devil. And that just might be what IM is based off of or has powers similar to. I just always kept on thinking of the devil from Cuphead and how they're kind of one-to-one in a way. Just the way they come down the throne, the way they eat fire, the tail, just everything about this kind of fits. And here we have it. IMU is whipping all of it out, but we cannot celebrate yet. We cannot assume that this is all IMU has to offer, because we gotta remember, everything we see in this chapter, even this transformation, this is only what IMU's able to do inside of Gunko's body. And the silhouette we had at the Reverie, Marie's Raw, that was a big, blobbish, round, serpent-esque creature. It wasn't this. You know, Gunko is like a petite babe, whereas what we saw at the Reverie, that was different. All right, so there is a chance that this is still just IMU's first form, or maybe this is just a small taste of IMU's powers, but this is not all IMU has to offer. You know, I just gotta hammer that in, because I've already seen people saying that IMU is disappointing, the design isn't that good, but it's like, brother, this isn't even IMU. You know, like this is like maybe a tenth of IMU or maybe a quarter of IMU. This isn't exactly them, man. So now that we have the general idea of what IMU is supposed to be, the devil, why do you guys think IMU has this transformation? Is this simply because Gunko is a modified body? Or is this the work of a devil fruit? Or is this maybe a different race of people that we haven't met yet that existed back during the Void Century? Because, let's be real, crazy races exist in One Piece. This would not be the first race with wings and weird abilities. I mean, just look at King, right? The Lunarians are just a crazy race that existed a long time ago. So yeah, maybe this could just be a race. Or maybe this is an actual god-devil, because a lot of people are bringing up the Harley text and they're saying, oh, maybe this is the forest god, because in the second verse of the Harley text, they mention that the forest god tamed devils and supposedly went against the sun god. And I don't think that's a bad idea, and I think people are on the right track with that. That feels right. But I do not think that IMU is the forest god. I think that's the one idea that I'm not the biggest fan of right now. And my reasoning for that is a little bit flimsy, I will admit. But my reasoning for not liking the forest god theory is because if you were to look at Gunko right now, would you think that Gunko is a forest god? Does anything about Gunko's design scream forest god? Because it doesn't. You know, for me, I really do just see a devil, an imp, a monster, a cretin. I just don't see anything woodsy about Gunko-IMU right here. And you might be saying, Sai, that's a little bit odd, right? But here's the thing. If you go over to Luffy, who is the sun god, he at least has the fire hair, right? He at least has something that ties him to the sun and fire. Whereas Imu here in this chapter, you know, even though it's not the real body, I acknowledge that, nothing screams forest god. So that is why I'm not the biggest fan of it right here. Maybe we go on and we see Imu's real body and they look like Green Bull when they're fully cloaked with their tree armor. Maybe that's going to be the case. But yeah, I'm kind of like on a boat where maybe this is just a new god we haven't heard of. Like maybe the moon god, right? Because we have the sea god, the forest god, the earth god, the sun god. I really do feel like we're missing a moon god in there somewhere. So maybe Imu is a god that nobody's written about. Maybe a god that erased their own name from history. Or maybe they just are the original devil fruit. I do not think there's a lot of bad ideas out there. I mean, even the forest god idea, you know, I've been kind of shitting on it, but I don't think it's bad. I just don't like it yet because they don't look woodsy. So we go on and we see that Imu is wasting no time. They're like, okay, this rebellion is too much. I'm not going to allow this. Killingham, amp it up. Is this all you can do, Killingham? And Killingham is like, no, not at all, my lord. There are still many nightmare fissures left open. And we see, after Killingham says that, we see giant holes in the ground. And that is supposedly where these monsters are coming from. What? You know, in my mind, you know, I was imagining Killingham going around pulling these monsters out of children's dream bubbles, like he did with Somers' salt. But no, Killingham just put holes in the ground, and that's where these guys are endlessly spawning from. And he goes on and he says that these creatures are made from dreams with no real concept of death. I can revive them at any time. I just need to give the signal. Brother, Killingham was going easy. You're telling me that these guys don't actually die? And he could res them whenever he wanted to? He just didn't? That's actually insane. So beforehand, we knew that Killingham could keep on spawning these monsters over and over and over because we've seen multiple copies of Fenrir, we've seen multiple copies of the Draugrs, of Nidhogg and all them. But I thought that they were just dying and respawning. But you're telling me that Killingham says that they don't even have to die? They can just revive on the spot? Brother, he really does have an endless army here. It's pretty insane what's happening. So after Imu addresses Killingham, he now moves his attention to Somers. And we see that Somers has finally put himself back together after Scomper's attacks last chapter. And that's pretty quick, man. I mean, of course, Somers is huffing and puffing. It looks like he's barely able to stand even. He even says outright that Scomper did a number on him and that he's still hurting. But he's up. You know, that regeneration is no joke. And it's crazy to think about, right? Because even if the Straw Hats learned how to hurt these guys, they wouldn't be able to put them down permanently. I mean, maybe you have to like really just knock them unconscious. You hit them with so much pain and damage that they just pass out for a little bit. Maybe that's the best option. But yeah, it looks like Imu's powers are actually making these guys immortal. Like you cannot get rid of them. So getting back to Imu, but Imu orders Saint Somers to shepherd those urchins, to take those kids to the boat like they originally planned. And I was kind of impressed by this because it either means one of two things. One, Imu spawned in Elbaf this chapter, looked around, and then was able to immediately deduce the Holy Knight's plan. Or two, when Imu tapped into Gunko's body, Imu obtained all of Gunko's memories so that he would know what the hell is going on this island. Because kidnapping the kids, that was Shamrock's idea, right? I don't know if Imu exactly told them to do that. It more so seemed like that is what Shamrock wanted to do, and that is his best plan on how to subjugate Elbaf. But yeah, Imu coming in, acting like the boss. We love to see it. And that is when we cut over to the Straw Hats who are wondering where their bosses are. You know, where's Luffy? Where's Zoro? Where's Sanji? Why do they have to go to the underworld right now? What a horrible time, man. And they even mention Harden. Like, dude, Harden's down there too. All of the heavy hitters are just not present in the Sun Realm. And I am just hoping, begging, and praying that they come sooner rather than later, because Elbaf needs their help, man. Thankfully, though, this chapter does open up another avenue for Luffy and the gang to realize what is happening up here, because last chapter, we were kind of banking on Scopper and Chopper to fall into the underworld and land nearby where Luffy and the gang are. But since Imu released that Conquer's Hockey Blast, and we saw how expansive it was, maybe it ended up reaching the underworld? And, you know, maybe Sanji or Luffy or somebody was able to sense it? Kind of like Egghead, right? The Straw Hats were up in the Labo phase, Saturn spawned on the Fabrio phase, and then the Straw Hats up there were like, whoa, what is that ungodly presence? Please, somebody realize that Imu is here. We need the Sun God, man. So yeah, we see Robin, and she is currently struggling against St. Somers' thorns. She's hurting herself trying to get out of them, and she says that she just can't sit here and do nothing. And sad to say, man, but it doesn't look like they're getting out of these thorns anytime soon. Robin's abilities truly are not the best when it comes to getting out of St. Somers' ability. So hopefully Zoro is the one who helps them, because I can't think of any other person who would be apt at destroying these thorns. Maybe Sanji would, right? Sanji would Ifrit Janbei, land here and then kind of break them all free. He burns the thorns away from them, but I'm not too sure. I do feel like these Straw Hats that we see in this chapter, I feel like they are going to be incapacitated for the most part. But there is a sleeper hit we have to talk about though, right? And that is the fact that Frankie, Cyborg Frankie, is somewhere nearby. So since we see Dory and Brogy arrive and confront Imu this chapter, we have to remember the other two characters who were right next to them in the previous chapters. And that was Frankie and Ripley. So maybe Frankie can come over here and free the Straw Hats, but he doesn't exactly have a sword. You know, like looking at the arrows and looking at these thorns, I do feel like you need a sharp-ass object. Maybe Frankie hops in the General Frankie and whips out the V-Saber, but I feel like that's maybe overkill and too large, but I don't know. I just wanted to bring up Frankie because I feel like not everybody's really talking about him. It feels like he's one of those characters that Oda's putting on the sidelines and hoping that everybody forgets, so that when Frankie shows up, it'll be really freaking epic. But now, we go back down and we see that Imu has some qualms about Elbaf. They're like, there's no real authority figure here. There's no king. What do we do about this? And that is when they witness that Dory and Brogy have arrived to them. And I love what Imu does here. I don't know why they say it this way, but they say their whole ass epithets, brother. They say Blue Ogre Dory, Red Ogre Brogy. I command thee to claim dominion of this island. And it's like, dude, why do you have to call him the Blue and Red Ogre? I don't know. It's just like if somebody sees Luffy and they said, Straw Hat Monkey D. Luffy, God Usopp, Cat Burglar Nami. You know, it just feels odd. I know some characters actually do that, but seeing Imu do that, I feel like it's another level. It almost feels like he respects the titles to an extent, which, well, I mean, I guess the world government and Marines do give them their epithets anyways, so maybe Imu is the one who does it. He's like, that right there, that's the pirate hunter. Over there, Blue Ogre. The heavenly demon Doflamingo. Like, maybe Imu's the guy giving those out, man. That'd be kind of funny. But yeah, after Imu says that, that is when we see Brogy grip Imu with his hands, and he says, hey you, are you one of those god knights? This is all your fault. And I will admit, you know, I wasn't always the biggest Dory Brogy fan, but I kind of like Brogy in this chapter. I will admit, because he really put on that mean mug. You know, he was serious when he was gripping Imu. You saw the veins popping out. Like, he was really trying to squeeze this guy. And that is when he starts interrogating Imu. He says, hey, I'm taking those kids back. How many of you are there? But Imu does not give a flying rat's ass. He just keeps on going, which, by the way, I call Imu him, but we don't really know the gender. I know some people are like, Sai, why him? Use she, use they. But I'm gonna be honest, man, until we get something confirmed, I'm just gonna use whatever feels right in the moment. You know, that's how I'm gonna go about this. But Imu, they just start monologuing, brother. Even though Brogy's over here doing everything, they're just monologuing. They say, listen, Brogy, go and meet with a mountain beard Yaru. Again, using the epithet, kind of funny. You shall take his head and raise it high, and then proclaim to the people of this island, we are the kings of Elbaf. Bro, Imu has the whole thing already written out. Imu is already giving orders to Brogy before they transform into demons. That's aura. You know, it's kind of like one of those things where like, I've already cut you. It's like one of those things, man. Like Imu already knows that they're getting out of this, that they're gonna turn Brogy. It's gonna be no big deal. And during all this too, we see them whip out a magical book, and this magical book spawns a shotgun. It spawns a dagger, and it's just a lot, man. Like I don't even know where to start. A magic book in One Piece? I mean, books aren't new. I mean, we've seen Kuma with the Bible, so I guess a satanic magical book also exists. We've seen people in Brook's time skip want to use black magic as well, so it's not unheard of. But actually seeing a magical book in One Piece, it's honestly kind of mind-blowing. You know what I mean? So, funny enough, I have seen an image floating around from One Piece Romance Dawn, where Luffy meets Anne, who is the prototype version of Nami. I think it was the prototype version of Nami. There's like multiple Romance Dawns, but it might have just been Nami, actually. But yeah, Luffy flexes his Devil Fruit powers, and they ask Luffy if his powers are actually just a black magic. And that's kind of interesting, right? Because that is chapter 1, technically chapter 0 of One Piece. And Oda was already tossing around the words black magic. And then you go to the other Romance Dawn. Like I said, there's multiple versions of it. In the other Romance Dawn, the first villain that Luffy fights is not a Devil Fruit user like Luffy. He's actually a straight magician. And I'm not talking about one of those magicians you see off the side of the road. No. Luffy's first opponent in Romance Dawn was a genuine magician. They conjured items out of nothing, kind of like what Imu's doing here. They brought out a gun, they brought out a sword, they were able to fly on a broomstick, and not to mention they had telekinesis. They could lift things in the air, they could shoot fire. And I get it, right? I'm showing you the image of the character right here, and you're like, wow, this guy's freaking ugly. This is one of the worst villain designs in One Piece, and I agree with you. But their powers were no joke. And that was chapter, technically 0 of One Piece, right? That is one of Oda's prototypes. So Oda playing around with magic and Devil Fruits at the same time, it's not unheard of. So that again, you know, going back to what Imu's powers might actually be, that is why I do think that this could just be straight magic. It does not have to be a Devil Fruit. This doesn't have to be the original Devil Fruit even. This could just be a brand new power system that Imu and Imu alone has access to. I do not think that is too absurd. But yes, Imu conjures a shotgun and he ends up shooting Brogy's wrist. And I'm gonna say it right here, brother, but is this perhaps the strongest gun feat in the series? I think so. You know, funny enough, you know, you might be thinking about that saying, wait, side, there's not a lot of gun feats in the series. There's 3. Thank you very much. The first one was Van Augur shooting, I think it was like a seagull from like an entire island away. That was kind of hype. I still remember that. I have flashbacks of that every now and then. The second one would be Yasopp, right? Yasopp shooting Barto's ship and it just freaking explodes. That was crazy. And now here we go, another gun feat where Imu shoots Brogy's wrist and it's gone. It actually disintegrates. It's crazy. We've never seen anything this potent or this brutal before, right? Am I wrong? But yeah, Brogy's wrist just gets completely demolished. That forearm is missing. And that is when Imu whips out another new ability. Dude, Imu is the gift that keeps on giving. Funny enough, this whole chapter is just Imu. I remember reading through it and I was like, wow, like not a lot happens. And then I was like, wait a minute, a lot happens. It's just all Imu. So Imu, I'm going to read this verbatim, but Imu says, thou shall cast aside thy lifespan for a body unyielding to death. Under Mu's dominion, thou shalt be granted unprecedented strength. No longer shall thou be bound by reason nor by common sense. Becoming a demon is truly the pinnacle of existence. Oh, brother. Imu acknowledges what they are. They're not deluded. You know, Imu is not like the other celestial dragons who call themselves gods. Imu knows that they're demons. He knows exactly what he is, and I love that, man. So he uses demonic contract curl against Brogy, and we see the abyss circle pop up beneath him, and boom, Brogy sinks down, and Imu uses another ability on top of that called Domi Reversi, which, according to TCB, the kanji reads as Black Dominion Reversion, and that is when we see the circle that Brogy is sinking into actually flip on top of him. It literally flips, and you see his legs are now blackened, and out of that circle, man, comes Demon Brogy. Yes, Demon Brogy is here, and he's even bigger now. He's at least 10 times the size of an actual giant. It's like Loki and Harden side by side. That is what happened to Brogy. That is exactly what happened here. And not to mention, but that wrist that Imu tore off earlier, yeah, he doesn't need it. It's back. You know, it's regenerating. Brogy can still wield an axe despite not having the wrist. Just like that, Brogy got the regeneration powers of the Gorosei and the Holy Knights. This is how it's done. This is how we have the Gorosei with their monster transformations that did not have Devil Fruit monikers, right? I'm assuming that Imu did this for all of them and maybe even some of the God Knights, right? Maybe he just goes up to them and he says, oh, demonic contract, looks at Saturn and he says, Ushioni, Yuki, looks at Mars, Itsumade, there's Venus over there, Bakotsu, right? Like, that is what's happening. Imu is the reason for all of this, which is kind of what we expected, but now that we actually have it being confirmed, it's like, yo, who can Imu not transform? Because if he's able to turn Brogy and Dory into villains, who is actually safe? I mean, hell, look at the Straw Hats here. All of the Straw Hats in the Sun Realm, minus Frankie, are currently chained up by Gunko's arrows and by Somers' thorns. So legitimately, what is stopping Imu from flying over there and saying Domi Reversi to them too? Nothing. Nothing is stopping them. So we could actually get evil versions of the Straw Hats. And I've seen people saying that maybe Haki can just mitigate this. If your Haki is strong enough, you can stop the reversal, you can stop the transformation. But look at the group right there. I mean, the only person out of all the Straw Hats captured that has Haki is Jinbei. You know, I mean, obviously Usopp has observation, but that's not really useful in this scenario. So yeah, I feel like the Straw Hats will actually flip sides. And that's kind of weird to think about, but I'm all for it. I'm all for seeing what Imu can actually do. And this does bring back the mural, by the way, because in the mural right underneath Imu, we saw a pirate ship. And it was really odd because it's like, oh, who does that pirate ship belong to? Because it's sailing with Imu, right? Was that the Blackbeard Pirates? Was it the Gorosei, the Holy Knights? Nobody really knew. But here we have it. Since we see that Imu can simply turn people bad, turn them into demons and bring them onto their side, maybe those are just other pirates. Maybe it's Crossguild. Maybe it's Shanks's crew. Maybe it's the Big Mom pirates. Maybe that could even be the Giants of Elbaf if they're successful here. Like, there's so many options now, and that really recontextualizes the whole final war. Because at first it's like, oh, it's all the pirates versus Imu, you know, all of them are gonna gang up, the Revs are gonna gang up, the Marines might even help our side a little bit, and we'll fight Imu. But Imu, the Gorosei and the Holy Knights, they're outnumbered. How will they win? And here we have it. Imu can simply turn people against each other. If Dory and Brogy are susceptible to the Domi Reversi, to the Devil's Contract, then really, who isn't? I mean, Dory and Brogy, as much as I make fun of them, they are heavy hitters. These guys are strong, and they are good-natured. So if they were made to flip sides in a single chapter, who couldn't be, right? I think that's where I'm at right now. And I wonder, too, is there a stipulation to this? Why didn't Imu transform Brogy in the first place? Did Imu have to damage Brogy before they could turn them? I don't know. You know, I feel like that could be one of the main caveats. Like, oh, Imu can transform anybody, but he has to shoot your wrist off, or he has to stab you first. You know, he has to implement himself in your body before you can change? Which might sound a little bit odd, but, you know, the Gorosei do all have, scars on their bodies and scars on their faces. So maybe they tried to fight Imu in the past. Maybe they didn't want to be transformed, but Imu forced them into it, which I gotta say now, the theory that maybe the Gorosei are good people, not looking too bad right now, right? Since we've seen firsthand that once Imu changes you, your whole personality changes, because Brogy looks so damn happy to go off to kill Yaru. So yeah, like I think this does change your entire being. So maybe a long time ago, the Gorosei were good guys, and then they got changed. Maybe the Holy Knights were good guys. Maybe even the 20 kings and queens who fought Joy Boy were good guys. But Imu simply corrupted them. And honestly, if push comes to shove in the final war, or if Imu really needs them to lock in, what's stopping Imu from transforming the admirals? Or the vice admirals, bro? Kobe! Dude, take Kobe, turn him into a demon, make him stronger. I mean, hell, dude, maybe even Blackbeard. Maybe Blackbeard helps Imu, and then boom, Blackbeard demon form. Like, dude, this is crazy. It's just the power up you can get. And keep this in mind, too. Imu is transforming all the giants in this chapter into curls. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not super sure. Curls, quarrels. I've heard a lot of weird pronunciations of it, so I'm just gonna go with curl for now. But yeah, like, imagine if Imu were to transform other people into unique monsters, like the Gorosei, or even like Shamrock's sword, which was a Cerberus. Like, I do think the more unique Imu gets with your devil contract, the stronger your transformation will actually be. Like, right now, all the giants are simply curls, right? All 5 or 7 of them, they're all curls. But imagine if he looks at one of the giants and he says, hey, the Gyuki, Saturn, he died a while back, so that one is open. That contract is available. You are gonna sign the Gyuki contract, and they're the new Saint Saturn or something, or the new Saint Saturn transformation. Well, that'd be so sick, brother. But yeah, I feel like now that we have this confirmation that this is how you become immortal, I do think all the God Knights have transformations. I do think it would be odd if the God Knights had regeneration, that unyielding body that Imu talked about, but not the unprecedented strength. So yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if Somers has a phase 2, if Killingham has a phase 2, and maybe even Gunko has a phase 2 where they all turn into their own unique monsters too. Oh man, the potentials with this power, brother. But yeah, we go on a little bit, you know, I jumped around a lot, I apologize for that, but we go on and we see that Dory got turned, and we end off the chapter with the double spread where all the giants are just locking in. They're ready to subjugate Elbaf. And what's funny too is that you can see all their eyes and they're kind of like sparking. I don't know if you guys have watched Kuroko no Basket, but it looks like all the giants and even Killingham's nightmare monsters, it's like they're all in the zone, right? All their eyes are just locked in. They're stronger than ever. And they're all on their way to kill Yaru. And the giants of the village are like, hey, Lord Yaru, you gotta run away. Dory and Brogy are acting strange. Run away. And Yaru, this guy, he says warriors do not know the meaning of the word run. Why? Why did that have a hint of aura to it? Yaru? Yaru, dude. This guy? I don't know, man. It's kind of like what happened with Oimo and Kashi and, you know, Dory and Brogy a long time ago. Like, yeah, their opponents weren't exactly the strongest people, and they kind of lost. All right, like Dory and Brogy against Mr. 3. Yeah, I get it. He played dirty, but still, they lost to him. So that always marred them for a little bit, until Egghead. Egghead, they looked amazing. And then Oimo and Kashi, same thing with the Frankie family. And then guess what? They came back on Egghead, and they looked amazing. Maybe Yaru will get that same treatment, because whenever I think of Yaru right now, I just think back to a young Yaru, where he was fighting against Kid Big Mom, and his literal brother-in-arms died. So, I don't know, man. Maybe he's gonna get the Dory, Brogy, Oimo, Kashi glow up, and he's gonna be insanely strong. But I gotta see it to believe it, you know? I gotta see it to believe it first. But I will admit, him at the end of the chapter saying he's not gonna run, I really do think that was pretty cool. So, matchup time, right? Now it's time to talk about what is going to happen now that the Giants of Elbaf have turned against us. I'm gonna be honest, man. You know, people are saying Zoro and Sanji should fight Dory and Brogy, and I think that's pretty cool. You know, I love myself a good Zoro-Sanji team-up. It doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it is always fire. But I don't want that. You know, when I look at Dory and Brogy, and when I see what they're doing, I really want them to go against Loki and Hardin. You know, Hardin is the leader of the new giant warrior pirates. Hardin wants to become the king of the giants even, which is what Dory and Brogy are supposed to become, right? The king of Elbaf. Granted, Hardin wants all the giants under his wing, not just Elbaf, so there's some nuance there, but you get the point, right? So I would love to see Hardin go against these guys for that title, to save Elbaf, and that could be a step in his journey. As far as Loki goes, I feel like Loki would just simply do it because Hardin is there, right? 2v2, I feel like that just makes the most sense. So maybe that's what's in store, but it's tough imagining that fight though, because Hardin, he's small. I mean, for a giant, he's normal, right? But in comparison to Dory and Brogy in this final panel, Hardin doesn't exactly match up yet. Loki does, right? Loki is an ancient giant, so he should be around that size, but Hardin is just, he's tiny, brother. So I wonder what's gonna happen. Maybe what would be really cool is if Imu transforms Hardin into a demonic warrior, and then Hardin retains himself, and then he fights back a little bit, and that's how we get Loki and Hardin versus Dory and Brogy. I don't think that'd be bad. I guess another way we could spin it is that maybe that's when Hardin fights Loki. Because you gotta remember, Hardin, even in the last couple of chapters, he still holds a lot of animosity towards Loki for killing their father and beating him up during his childhood. So maybe Imu uses that hatred to his advantage. Maybe Imu transforms Hardin, and that is Loki's matchup. I think that'd also be really cool, right? A brotherly quarrel where they're actually on equal footing. I think that'd be sick. Maybe that's it. The reason I did think of Loki and Hardin first, by the way, another reason, is because of what Jinbei said back when the Holy Knights first appeared here in Elbaf. Jinbei and Usopp talked about how since they are human-sized people should be the ones who deal with them, whereas giants should deal with giant problems. So that is why I want the giants to deal with Dory and Brogy, while the Straw Hats simply clean up Imu, Killingham, and Somers. Let's say Loki and Hardin do go against Dory and Brogy, then it would be 3v3, right? Luffy versus Imu. We could have Zoro versus Somers? Zoro versus Somers, I don't know. Maybe Zoro versus Killingham. I feel like, I don't know, that's a weird one. I feel like all these matchups are so odd right now because I can't imagine how they'd play. Because I could see Zoro and even Sanji fighting Somers because both their abilities work well against vines. And then for Killingham, he has the Nightmare ability, which I don't know who goes well against that, right? Mine is Usopp, but Usopp's kind of like a weird one because he's currently held up. But yeah, I think matchups are like the main thing right now. Like, where are all the pieces going to fall? Oda, Imu, they knocked down the dominoes, and now we just gotta see where everything lands. And also, we can't forget, but Elbaf is supposed to be Usopp's arc, so one way or another, Usopp will squeeze in to one of these matchups. Honestly, I would love it if Usopp actually worked together with Loki and Hardin to take down Dory and Brogy. Maybe Usopp's observation haki is exactly what these giants need to go against the demon versions of Dory and Brogy. Maybe even Usopp is the one who frees them from IMU'S devil contract. I mean, he is God Usopp after all. I gotta say this though, but I really do love the amount of foreshadowing that Oda put in to Dory and Brogy becoming villains. I remember at the beginning of Elbaf, right before we arrived on the island, Luffy and the gang were partying with Dory and Brogy. And Luffy dropped a really weird line. A line that I'm pretty sure we talked about, and if not, we talked about on the podcast. But Luffy said, hey, even if you guys are my enemies, I'm still going to become Pirate King. And that sounds like a matter of fact, right? Like, yeah, like nothing's gonna stop Luffy. Yeah, we get it. But why would you even bring up that scenario? Like, Dory and Brogy came to rescue Luffy. They're like their best friends. That's their sun god. Why would they ever become villains? But here we have it. This right here is the payoff to that line. And then not just that, but people have pointed out, back in chapter 633, Dory and Brogy were featured in a cover page that said friend or foe. And here we have it. 1 minute they're friends, next minute they're foes. So yeah, I think there is a lot of foreshadowing to this event. I think Oda's been looking forward to this for a long time. And I know some people say that, oh, like that isn't foreshadowing, that's a coincidence. You know, chapter 633, that's not a thing. But even Road had that treatment. You know, Road's cover page said, I will return. And guess what? He returned. You know, he came back with the force, brother. People thought he was a throwaway character, but no. He came back and he was prominent for like 5 chapters. So yeah, I think Oda has been looking forward to showing us the blue and red ogre as demons. And also, I do want to shout out this image right here. But I believe this is from One Piece Party. But Oda does a lot of these spin-off, like, side manga chapters. I think his editors also help him with it too. But there was a chapter where Oda depicted a couple of the Straw Hats as evil versions of themselves and as demons and monsters, and then other ones were not. So it's like, wait a minute, is this what the Elbaf matchup is gonna be? Will Imu actually turn these Straw Hats into demons, and these ones over here will be the ones who fight them off? Oh yeah, real quick, but one more theory I've been seeing people talk about is that maybe you cannot be turned into a demon if you're a member of the D Clan. And I don't think that's a bad idea, but my one problem with that is the fact that there's not a lot of D Clan members out there. Or like go look at the D Clan members. There's Law, there's Luffy, of course there's Garp and Dragon, but you know, they're kind of like outside right now. There's Teach, there's Vivi, and then there's Saul, and I think that's it. So imagine that handful of characters going against everybody else who could be turned into demons. Like, I just feel like they're heavily outnumbered in that regard. So I don't think the D-Clan is the answer. Maybe it's something the D-Clan can do. Like, maybe the D-Clan can grant you protection, and then that would be okay. But if it's just the D-Clan blood, then nah, man, that's too little, man. You know, there's not a lot of heavy hitters in the D-Clan right now. So now all that's really left to talk about is how will we save Dory and Brogy? Is it even possible? Personally, I don't know. You know, when you make a deal with the devil or sign that contract, it almost feels permanent, right? And even Imu says it himself. In exchange for your lifespan, you're going to become immortal and you're going to get these powers. So if we break the contract, do they get their lifespan back? Or will they just fade into oblivion? That's tough. But of course, if I had to put my money on somebody, I think we'd all put our money on Luffy being the key here, right? The sun god, the liberation god. And what I thought was very noteworthy is that when Brogy is being turned into the demon, when Imu uses Domi Reversi, it's a pitch black version of Brogy that is on the other side of it, right? So I wonder if Luffy will be the solution simply because Luffy is white. You know, we flipped Dory onto his black side, but maybe Luffy can flip Brogy into his white side, maybe? I don't know. It's all really abstract. We're in unknown territory. You know, we're talking about abilities that we've never seen before. So I think there is a lot of wiggle room here when it comes to theories. But with that being said though, y'all, thank you again for being here and checking out this review video. Thank you for watching all the way until the end. I really freaking appreciate it. And yeah, make sure to comment your theories and opinions down below. We will be reading through the comment section in the next couple of days. So stay tuned for that. Until then, I'll catch y'all later. Peace out, y'all, and stay safe.